Hello, absolutely wonderful people. I hope you're having a great day. We are going to factor trig expressions in this video. But first, I want to review how to factor and solve the following. Recall that this is a particular problem where a is equal to a value that is not 1. So this is the harder process where you have to circle the first coefficient and the last constant, and you have to multiply those two numbers. So 2 times 6 is 12. And then you have to underline your middle term, and that's the value you have to add to, in this case, 7. Your next job is thinking of two numbers, and these two numbers have to multiply to 12 and add to 7. If you said 4 and 3, you are correct. We now need to split the 7x into a 4x and a 3x. But the question is, which one should we write first? Well, because we're starting with a 2x, we've got to choose something between these two where they have a common factor. In this case, we should choose the 4x to write first because 2x and 4x have a common factor of 2. So I'm going to rewrite this first. I'm going to write my 2x squared, of course. But then I'm going to split this middle 7x term into these two terms right here. So I'm going to have a 4x, and then I'm going to have a 3x. And then, of course, I'm going to write down my plus 6. Please notice that 4x plus 3x is the same thing as 7x, so we haven't changed the problem at all. Next thing that we do is we underline the first two terms and the last two terms. And I have to pull out a common factor. In this case, I have a 2x that's a common factor. And I say to myself, 2x times x gives me a 2x squared. And I also need a plus 2 here because 2x plus 2 gives me that 4x. All right, as soon as we have that x plus 2 determined, we write it right here. And then I have to figure out what this number is. Well, that's going to be a plus 3 because that's going to be 3x plus 6, and that's what we have above. Next step is to pull out the x plus 2 as just one term here, and then we're going to combine the 2x here and the plus 3 here. So that's going to be a 2x plus 3. All right, in this particular video, we're only going to factor. We're not going to solve, but just for sake of review, because on the next video, we're going to need to know how to solve these equations. Let's review how to solve. Well, in a particular situation like this, we have an easy answer of x equals -2, because if we plugged in -2 right here, we would get 0, and that would make the whole expression 0. But for this one here, we've got to pull this off to the side and say 2x plus 3 is equal to 0. Subtract 3 from both sides. We get 2x equals -3. Divide by 2. And we get x equals -3 over 2. So from this particular solution right here, we get x equals -3 over 2. All right, let's actually do a trigonometry one. But first, we need to do some notation alert, notation alert, notation alert. Cosine squared x is equal to cosine x times cosine x. So how do I pronounce this again? I called it cosine squared x. Okay, because that 2 is located right here, that's implying that we have cosine x times cosine x. Now you might say, hey, Ms. Sorensen, that doesn't make much sense. What if we did cosine x squared? Well, cosine x squared is actually cosine of quantity x squared. It is not the same thing as cosine x times cosine x. The only other situation that you could do is you could say cosine x and put parentheses around the whole thing and say squared. That's correct, but we usually don't write it like that. We always write that as cosine squared x. These things mean the same thing. It means the same thing as cosine x times cosine x. But what I really want you to use is this right here, cosine squared x. Okay, now that we know that, now let's go ahead and let's Screwed that up, 1 second. Now let's go ahead and factor a trig expression. And hopefully you recognize this as exactly the same problem that we just did. Remember how we had a 2, a 7, and a 6 in this problem? So it is the same problem, but we have these cosines popping up in here. So the first thing that you're going to do here is you're going to identify what we want to set x equal to. Well, that probably doesn't make quite a lot of sense to you right now, but let's see if I can do it for you first, then you say, oh, okay, that makes sense. I'm going to let x equal whatever this thing is right here. Or you could say whatever this thing is and ignore the 2. But we're going to let x equal cosine x. Well, I can rewrite 2 cosine squared x as 2 cosine x times cosine x. And I can just rewrite the rest of this as well. So now, if x is equal to cosine x, I can write this as 2 times x plus 7 times x plus 6. Or x times x is obviously 2x squared. Okay. Now you should recognize this as the same problem that we just did on the last slide. And the answer that we got for that was x plus 2 and then 2x plus 3. And now what we're going to do is we're going to substitute in for x. We know that x is cosine x, so we've got cosine x plus 2 and then 2 cosine x plus 3. And that's it. That's our answer. We're only asked to factor this problem. We're not asked to solve it, although that is coming up shortly. Okay, let's do another one here. Here, what should we let x be equal to? If you said sine x, you're totally right. This is going to be x equals sine x. So of course this is sine x times sine x right here. So I can replace sine squared x as x times x, or just x squared. And then this one becomes plus 10x plus 21. Now, is this a problem where we have to circle the first term and the last term and then multiply and add, split up that middle value? The answer is no. And the reason why is because what's this number right here? What's that coefficient? It's a 1. So this is actually the easier problem. This is the one where we're just trying to add to this and multiply to that. Remember, I am good at this. So what two numbers add to 10 and multiply to 21? If you said 7 and 3, you are correct. So I can go ahead and I can write this as an x plus 7 and an x plus 3. And now all I have to do is just plug right in, meaning I'm going to replace all my x's with sine x. So I get sine x plus 7 times sine x plus 3. All right. Let's do another one. How about this one here? 3 sine squared x minus 8 sine x plus 4. Well, clearly x equals sine x. And we're going to have 3x squared minus 8x plus 4. This one is a harder one. We have to circle our 3 and our 4. We are trying to multiply to 4, and we are trying to add to negative 8. Well, what are those two numbers? Oops, I screwed that up. We're trying to multiply times 3 times 4, which is 12. Of course, Miss Sorensen. All right, so what are those two numbers? I come up with negative 6 and negative 2, right? Negative 6 times negative 2 is a 12. Negative 6 plus negative 2 is a negative 8. And doesn't it kind of look like someone smiling right there? LOL. All right, now that I've determined that negative 6 and negative 2, I'm going to go ahead and split this negative 8x up. That's going to give me a 3x squared. In this case, it doesn't matter which one I put first here, but I'm going to go ahead. Look at smiley face, now it has a mask. I'm getting distracted. All right, anyway, I'm going to put the negative 6 first, although you could have done the other one. and then a minus 2x. That's coming from these, plus 4. Underline, underline, pull out a 3x. This would give you an x minus 2. And then here I'm going to have an x minus 2 as well. And this value here is going to be a minus 2 because that's going to multiply through to match with these two terms right here. All right, now this is going to give me a 3x. Sorry about that, folks. So this is going to give me a 3x minus 2 times an x minus 2, or you could have written it the other way. That's no problem at all. And now I'm going to substitute back in, and I'm going to write that over here where I've got more room. That's going to give me a 3 sine x minus 2, and then I've got a sine x minus 2. So all I'm doing is instead of writing an x here, I'm writing sine. All right, last one, I promise. Here it comes. All right. I'd like you to factor the following. I highly recommend kind of pausing this video and making sure you can get this on your own. All right, folks, we should have rewritten this as 5x squared plus 19x plus 12. I multiply a 5 times a 12, and I'm trying to multiply to 60 and add to 19. Those two values that I get are 4 and 15. Yep, 4 times 15 is 60, 4 plus 15 is 19. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to split this up. This is going to give you 5x squared. My 19x, I'm going to write the 15 first. Doesn't that make sense? That has more factors with 5 than 4 does. So I'm going to write plus 15x plus 4x plus 12. Underline, underline, pull out a 5x. That gives me an x plus 3, which means I immediately write x plus 3 here. This, of course, becomes a plus 4. And then I'm left with a x plus 3 times a 5x plus 4. You could have written it the other way if you'd like. And last thing is, I didn't write it down because I feel like we got the hang of this, but x equals cosine x here. So I'm just going to substitute in, and what do I get? I get cosine x plus 3 times 5 cosine x plus 4. There we go. That's our answer. Hope you didn't find these too difficult. I think they're kind of reasonable, especially if you're good at factoring. Have a wonderful day, everyone.